Negative, K. Nothing further. Just see the cabbie on the corner.
"60 years later, we still talk about it, and in lots of different ways. The crazy thing is, among several things associated with this tragedy, you won't even have to go to Dallas to find the solid theories. In Cleveland, there are people with information." After the assassination, President Lyndon Johnson set up the Warren Commission with the aim of investigating his predecessor's untimely death. The primary staff was made up of 34 members from across the country.
As time has gone on, from my standpoint, I've become convinced that there was no conspiracy. But what the Warren Commission said was that there was no evidence, no credible evidence of a conspiracy. And that's a big difference.
History and the Warren Commission and the House Select Commission painted a big picture of the Dallas-Fort Worth circumstances. They did a terrible job.
There was a significant anti-Kennedy sentiment. There were wanted dead or alive kinds of posters up and around. So yeah, I'm sure that there were people who would like to have seen him no longer with us. So there were a couple of things that were going on. One of the things that people tend to forget is that religion played a really big role in politics at that time, and he was our first Catholic president. So there were a lot of people who were still very upset with that. He was a pretty liberal president. There were a lot of people who were very upset with that. We had conflicts going on in Vietnam, and there were questions about whether the troops were going to stay or go, when they would get pulled out, if they would get redeployed. People were upset with that. And I haven't even begun to touch on the notion of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the fear of the Soviet Union, what was going on in terms of the Bay of Pigs invasion and the efforts to whether there would be a support for an overthrow of Castro, etc.
And I have no doubt that most Cubans today look forward to the time when they will be truly free, free from foreign domination, free to choose their own leaders, free to select their own system, free to own their own land, free to speak and write and worship without fear or degradation. And then shall Cuba be welcomed back to the Society of Free Nations and to the associations of this hemisphere.
It was lunchtime, and it was November 22nd, the day he was assassinated. I was getting on an elevator after lunch, going back to my law firm, and somebody in the elevator said, "The president has been shot." My initial instant reaction was those damn segregationists, that this was a very volatile time during the civil rights movement. And Medgar Evers, for example, but he had been assassinated in Mississippi in June. There were 4 young girls who were killed at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. And frankly, a great fear with respect to Kennedy's going to Dallas was that he would not be safe, and the lack of safety was going to come from people who were pro-segregationists. So that was my initial reaction, that the assassins, or assassin, and I really assumed it was assassins plural, were segregationists who did not like Kennedy.
A great change is at hand, and our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all.
And it's good that we know our history here, because he proposed the Civil Rights Act.
Next week, I shall ask the Congress of the United States to act, to make a commitment it is not fully made in this century to the proposition that race has no place in American life or law.
And they were going to end the Southern way of life, which was apartheid, segregation, movie theaters, swimming pools, bathrooms, you name it. You've all seen the drinking fountains colored in white.
You know, if you go to the 6th floor museum, which is at Dealey Plaza, and you can look out the window of where the shots were fired from. And frankly, many of the people that I know who would kind of see it say that was not a difficult shot.
First of all, you know, the brain went missing. The guy was shot in the brain. You'd want to know, and that would have told you whether it was a front or back. But from my standpoint as a physician, a trauma physician, you look at the Zapruder film, if you get struck in the front, your head flies backwards, and that's exactly what we see on the film. And they're trying to say, well, that means the shot came from the front. I mean, the conspiracy people, and we didn't figure this out till 1967. They go, well, there must be a conspiracy, shot in the front, and then people make up these things. Well, how does the head fly back if it's shot from the back, where Oswald's position was in the back? And they came up with these terrible explanations. The explanations. There were 2 shooters.
The most common explanation for that is that once he's been hit and he's gone up ridges like this, then the opportunity is a release that's occurring. And I'm not a forensic scientist, so please don't take my explanation too seriously on that. But visually, that does seem to represent a gunman from the front. Visually, it certainly doesn't seem to make any sense because of the delayed reaction that's occurring. So in order for that one bullet to have caused as many wounds as they had to have had, one of 2 things has to be true. There's either the 2 men are sitting right in front of each other, it's passing through in a direct line, it's pausing because of the relationship when it hits the wrist, and there's a full second or more occurring between the time Kennedy's hit and the time that Connolly's hit. Or the alternative explanation, which I think is the evidence is supportive, the bodies are actually turned slightly, so it is a straight shot that's going through, and Connolly is taking time to realize that he's been hit. And there is evidence that suggests that oftentimes when people are shot, their bodies don't react immediately. It takes a moment for the body to recognize that.
No, I have not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me yet. The first thing I heard about was when the newspaper reporters in the hall asked me that question.
Probably the best evidence that Oswald was involved were the fact that his rifle was missing.
Police came out to the house in the afternoon of the 22nd and asked if they could search. And I said that Lee Harvey Oswald was in their custody for shooting an officer. And I said that most of their things were in the garage. They asked if he had any guns. And I said I thought not. Translated the question to Marina, who said that she had seen the butt end of a rifle in a blanket roll that she indicated on the floor. But when they picked up the blanket roll, it was empty.
Obviously, when you get to things like the Tippit shootings, then there's a clear connection between the bullets, the casings at least, and in his pistol. There is evidence from him earlier attempting to assassinate General Walker, and those same shots came from the same rifle.
Walker was a segregationist, a vile segregationist. When they tried to integrate the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, in 1962, Walker led a riot, and 2 people died. Kennedy had called his brother Robert and talked it over, and they said he's the Attorney General. I said, let's arrest him. So U.S. Marshals went down to Ole Miss and arrested Walker and put him in a mental institute. That didn't go over well with the radical right or Walker. Oswald was seen multiple times going in and out of the office of the biggest segregationist, the biggest racist in New Orleans, who happened to be the former director of the Chicago FBI. I mean, this is a big guy, a man of stature. And he said, well, he gave an interview once, my job in the FBI was to infiltrate the communists, which plays into why Oswald was pretending to be a communist. Oswald in New Orleans pretends to be a communist, so he starts handing out these fair play for Cuba. Cuba was communist. It had just been taken over by Castro and the communists. These pamphlets, we should treat them with respect and decency, fair play. He made a mistake. He put the address of the hangout for Guy Bannister. The Warren Commission asked the FBI in 1964, go over to that office. It's 544 Camp Street. It's in the central business area right off the Canal Street. They go over and there's Guy Bannister in the office. The FBI says, Mr. Bannister, was Lee Harvey Oswald at this office? He put the office address on his pamphlet. I go, no, I never saw him, heard of him. And they said, oh, okay.
I can say I think he was dramatically involved, or intimately involved. I think there's a good chance he acted alone, although I don't know that for sure. Here's a guy who at times said he was a Marxist, at times said he wasn't. Here's a guy who at the height of the Cold War defected from the United States, denounced it, applied for citizenship in the Soviet Union, lived there for a while, found a young woman who he ended up marrying in Marina, left the Soviet Union, was allowed back into the United States. Now, if you're a conspiracy theorist, this is proof positive that he was part of a conspiracy and was going off to kill the president, because there's just no meaningful explanation for how that series of events took place at a time at the height of the Cold War. But it also is just evidence of I think of a troubled individual who seems at times to be supportive of the Marxists, at times opposed to the Marxists. I don't know that we'll ever know what exactly was going through his mind.
I think he wanted to do something sensational. His life had fallen apart. His job was a seasonal job, so he's going to lose his job in December at the Texas School Book Depository, and his marriage had collapsed.
One of the circumstances most subject to critical thinking was 48 hours after Kennedy's death at the Dallas Police Headquarters, when nightclub owner Jack Ruby murdered Lee Harvey Oswald.
Jack Ruby feared that Jews would be blamed for the assassination of President Kennedy. In this particular set of events, you have to go back to April of 1963. And that's the time in which Lee Harvey Oswald attempted to assassinate Edwin Walker in Dallas. When the shots were fired at Edwin Walker, a week after the assassination, there ensued a week or 10 days of anti-Semitic vandalism. So Jews were being blamed in April for the assassination of, the attempted assassination of Edwin Walker. Thus, when it came to November 22nd, Ruby's reaction was they were going to be blamed again. And why did he feel this way? On the morning of the assassination, November 22nd, there was a full-page, black-bordered advertisement in the Dallas Morning News, which was an anti-Kennedy advertisement. And it was signed with the name Bernard Weissman. And when Ruby saw that ad, he thought two things. One, he thought that the black border may have been somehow connected with the assassination, may have been foretelling the assassination. And he thought that the name Bernard Weissman, as the chairman of the committee that sponsored the ad, was a fictitious name, because Ruby believed that no one who was Jewish would have been anti-Kennedy. Ruby set out for the next 2 days to stay close to the investigation and try to find out what he could find out about Bernard Weissman. And when he shot Oswald and was wrestled to the ground and taken upstairs to the 5th floor of the Dallas Police Department, Secret Service agent Forrest Sorrells asked him, "Jack, why did you do it?" His answer was, "I had to show the world a Jew had guts."
Jack Ruby was working for General Walker. Ruby himself said, "I am being set up. I am being used for a purpose." So Ruby comes before the Warren Commission to give his testimony. "Why did you kill Oswald?" Ruby says to Mr. Warren with a sincere, you could hear it in the dictation, "I was used for a purpose." He said, "Mr. Warren, do you know who General Walker is? What the John Birch Society was? That was the right wing underground. Very powerful people." He goes, "I know that, Mr. Ruby." He said, "Chief Justice, I was used for a purpose. Does that make sense to you?" "Mr. Ruby, I don't know what you mean." And he says, "Well, then in that case, Mr. Warren, I have lost you."
It's important for people to remember that 4 minutes before Ruby shot Oswald, Ruby was standing across the street at a Western Union making a telegraph of some money to one of his dancers. That he left his dog, who he loved very, very much, in a heated car with the windows rolled up. He was in and out of that police station all the time. He was friends with most of the police. Many of them came to his bar. I think what ended up probably happening is he saw that Oswald hadn't been sent aside yet, and he walked over there to check out what was going on and had a spontaneous reaction.
This is the basement floor of the Dallas City Hall, and that's a scuffle on the basement floor. It seems to concern photographers. He has been shot. Oswald has been shot.
Leon Hubert, who was my colleague on the Warren Commission, and I were trying to find any connections between Ruby, because there were rumors that Ruby was involved with organized crime, and that he may have been put up to this by somebody. We could not, in all the questioning of people that we did, we could not find anybody who had that kind of contact with Ruby. I would like the public from here on to look at the question of why did Oswald do it? What was his motive? If he wasn't involved in a conspiracy, what was his motive? And I thought the same question, of course, is true. Ruby, what was Ruby's motive? But I think that's the easier one. But the question of why Oswald did it, and in order to understand why Oswald did it, you have to understand the politics of the time, his interest in the politics of the time. Oswald tried to get away, so it's clear he didn't want to be caught. Why did Oswald shoot Tippit? He was obviously frightened. He did not want to be caught. So I think that, yes, he wanted someone else to be blamed, and he expected that the right-wing segregationists would be the people, and the Walker supporters would be the ones who would be blamed.
Yeah, so General Walker was the mastermind. General Walker was from Dallas, Texas. He had the motive, the means, and the opportunity to do it.
The majority of the evidence seems to suggest that Oswald was interactive, wasn't politically involved. He had the means, he had the weapon, and on the other hand, the actual evidence linking him to anybody externally isn't very good. There are a lot of questions, there are a lot of what ifs, there's a lot of possibilities. Yes, there were interactions that occurred between people. Is that evidence that he worked with them in an assassination? No, to use an old phrase, we don't have that smoking gun.
There are things to hesitate on, things to consider. Regardless of whether we agree or disagree on any of this, it's important to listen. When you think about Kennedy, it's the kind of camaraderie he would have promoted. While sure he wasn't perfect by any means, he wasn't without merit. It's what he would have wanted, looking to each other for those days of peace.